Hi there, and welcome to a special video on my channel. Today, I'm joined by Martin Gonzalvez, the founder of the Facebook group Martin's Print and Play Hideaway, which just passed 13,000 members on Facebook.
Yeah,
He's also the host of his own YouTube channel, Print and Play Hideaway. And I'll link to both of those groups in the description below. Thank you so much, Martin, for joining me today. I'm really excited for this conversation. So, before we get too much into the details, I want to ask you a broad question, just in case some people might not know what a print and play game is. Can you tell us what is a print and play game?
sure. And first of all, I'm very glad to be here. Thanks for having me. So, what's a print and play game? It's a board game or a card game that is similar to one that you could purchase in the store or back on crowdfunding. But what the designers and or publishers have decided to do is that they've decided to provide digital files, PDF, that folks can download and print at home on their own printer at home or just take it to a print shop. And then they can actually cut it up and produce their own custom copy of the game. And there are a number of places where print and play files um, can be sourced. And so, yeah, that's basically what a print and play game is.
Right. So, like a DIY, make it yourself board game, make it at
Yeah,
home sort of idea. Very cool.
exactly. Yeah.
Thanks, Martin. So, can you tell us a bit more about yourself and how you got into print and play games?
Yeah. I got into board games, hobby board games, fairly late, like I would say around 2017. I mean, when I was, if you go back many, many years, and I was in school, I played Dungeons and Dragons with my classmates and my friends, and then we, branched off to other different ones like Call of Cthulhu, etc. But once I graduated from college and then I started working, you know, stuff like that kind of, got receded into the background, and then eventually just was busy with life, right? And then I don't really recall why I got into hobby board games. I think it was like
Mhm.
watching a dice tower video or something like that.
Right.
um and then I'm like, okay, this is interesting. Oh, no, 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 okay, I remember now. It was my oldest son. He was into it.
Mm,
And then he brought over a game called Eldritch Horror,
mm.
and if you're familiar with that one. And that reminded me of Call of Cthulhu that I'd been playing, back when I was in school. And so I got into it. My son and I played it, and then we played it with my other kids. We have four kids. And then I really enjoyed it, and so that kind of started it for me. And then I started like getting into it, finding out about more games. I learned about Clank. I learned about what were some of the early ones? Lords of Waterdeep, and
Right.
well, these kinds of like gateway hobby games, that I would play
Mhm.
with my family. And then it got to the point where I was buying a lot of games, and my wife wasn't very happy about this situation, right? So, um, at some point, I said to myself, "Well, is there an alternative? Because I'd really still like to keep on exploring this kind of game world and
Right.
all these wonderful, like hundreds and many, many hundreds of different games that I'm interested in. But I'd like not to spend so much money." And that got me to, do a little research and realize there were places online where folks were offering print and play versions of legitimate games. And these were like, name designers with reputations
Hmm.
for free. So, for example, there's a website called Good Little Games, and it's run by a couple of folks named Matthew Dunstan and I forget his designing partner, but they offer a whole bunch of good little small but well designed and high quality games for free, and you can just
Wow.
you can download it, then you can put it together, and then you can play it at home, which I started doing.
Right.
And so I'm like, well, what else is out there? And then I that got me into like Board Game Geek, um, and that got me into realizing that there are print and play game design competitions running
Hmm.
pretty much all the time, every year and multiple times throughout the year. And that got me to explore the solitaire print and play game design contests. And that led me to a game called Agent Decker, which was an entry in the 2015 contest. And this was a solo deck building game with a theme of like you're a spy and you have to enter this, you have to penetrate this like secret facility, and the art was really cool. And so I'm like, this is good stuff. Like this is high quality stuff. I'm super into it, and I can't believe that this stuff is just out there available. And a lot of folks are offering them for free, for various reasons. And so that
Hmm.
was kind of like my entry point into print and play gaming. And Agent Decker was actually my very first print and play game. I have since made about 200. um, and I've also branched out into retheming my own like custom copies of games of like existing games. That's another kind of subgenre of print and play is like folks get into like, well, this game is cool, but wouldn't it be even better
Right.
if it had this other theme that I haven't seen anywhere? And then you kind
Hmm.
of do it, and then you can do it, and then you can ask permission from the original game designer. It's like, hey, can I share my free print and play retheme of this? And a lot of times people say yes. Um,
Right.
and then that got me into game design. And so I've gotten to the point where I've like designed a few games myself. They're free printed plays. There's three of them that are available on Board Game Geek right now. So that's kind of like been the journey over the past almost 7 years. Yeah.
That's very cool. And what are the names of the games that you designed?
So in 2018, I joined the Solitaire Print and Play Game Design Contest. My game is called The Cleaner, and the concept of it is kind of macabre, which is because we're recording this around close to Halloween, so maybe it's appropriate.
Sure.
Um, if you recall the movie Pulp Fiction, there's a character in this movie called the Wolf, played by Harvey Keitel, and the Wolf is the person you call if a crime scene has gone wrong, and there's
Right.
DNA everywhere, there's blood everywhere, and so the cleaner comes in and is they have specialized skills to be able to clean up all this DNA evidence before the cops show up. So that was kind of
Right.
like the concept of my first game.
Hmm.
um and yeah, so that was in 2018. And then like I think the following year, because I've always loved noir, like the noir theme, kind of like 1930s 40s trench coat,
Mm.
fedora,
Hmm.
investigator type stuff.
Sure.
So I made a noir game called the Minty's Falcon, because I think the contest was the Mint Tin Game Design Contest. So designing a game that fits inside like an Altoids tin.
Right.
Another subgenre of like print and play and game design.
Hmm.
And so mine was kind of like a play on the classic noir film, The Maltese Falcon, but it was mint. It was
Yeah.
a little pun. And then that one's up there. And then last year, 2023, I designed a worker placement survival post apocalyptic game called Do Not Go Gentle. And so that one, that's kind of like my biggest game design so far.
Hmm.
It's actually a massive print and play build. So like literally only five people outside of myself have built it, have
Mm.
have had the kind of like the
Yeah.
diligence to be able to build that.
Hmm.
Um, but that one's on as a free print and play on Board Game Geek as well.
That's so interesting. And oh, that just made me think of so many. I don't want to deviate too much from the questions. I have so many questions for you. I have so many questions about like the design side of it. I think that's just there's so many different things to considerations to have when you're making a print and play game. And so for the game that you just mentioned that is has a lot of components, it's a fairly big ask, you could say, of people to craft it. How much do you take that into consideration when you're designing print and play games?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I started, um, the other folks who like my peers, my contemporaries, were also kind of folks who were into the larger, the more substantial print and play experiences. So I felt like I was joining a group of folks who didn't have any issues with like, they just took for granted like, oh, print and play games are like there's a main board that you have to make. You have to learn how to make a folding board. There's 50, 100, 150 cards sometimes, which at that time seemed like a lot to me. Wow, crafting 150 print and play cards.
Right.
And nowadays, after all my experience, 300 cards is like a light snack. Um, I I don't want to boast, but I mean, like your sense of scale and your sense of like what is actually a lot of work in print and play
Mm,
in a print and play project kind of
okay.
evolves over time. But nowadays, and especially post pandemic, right? So during the pandemic, there was a trend for a lot of folks being stuck at home, and a lot of publishers kind of provided print and play versions of their, kind of published games, and also just like specialized print and play things. Like I think Stonemeyer Games did Rolling Realms, which was
Right.
pretty big during the pandemic.
Hmm.
Um, and so folks, so more kind of like non print and play niche people started to become aware of this, and they, to entice them, the designers were providing kind of like roll and write. So you don't really have to craft anything. You print a sheet or two, you provide some dice, you've got something to write with, you're good to go, right? And so the popularity of kind of roll and write um, rose during the pandemic and has kind of persisted since then. And nowadays, you have a bunch of folks in print and play, like a significant number of my members in my in my Facebook group. That's kind of the level of print and play that they are comfortable with. Just print a couple of sheets, and so
Right.
whereas and the number of folks who like me, kind of crazy folks who are more comfortable with crafting medium to large to gigantic print and play projects,
Hmm.
just relatively smaller.
Right. What would
Yeah,
you say was the biggest print and play game that you crafted?
sure. So are you familiar with the game Wingspan?
Yes.
Hey, so I said to myself, I like Wingspan. I like it a lot. I like birds, but I like board games more. So I had the crazy idea last year to retheme the base game of Wingspan, 180 cards and 26 mission cards and a bunch of different boards to a board game theme. So instead
Mm,
of like inviting birds to your different habitats, you are adding board games, actual board games to your collection, to different shelves in your collection
love that.
based on and I rethemed all the values. I had to like find like equivalents for because the wingspan is a value in the original game, and I had to
Right.
map that to like game complexity per the BGG complexity scale of 1 to 5.
Ah,
Anyway, it was a pretty crazy project, and it took me about 6 months just to do the retheme. And
yeah.
then when I was done, and then I, along the way, I emailed, I geek mailed Jamie Stegmeyer, and I said, "Hey, I have a crazy idea." And by the way, this isn't the first time I've geek mailed Jamie Stegmeyer with a crazy idea. Um, so he's kind of used to me already. And he goes, and I say, I've done this board game retheme of Wingspan. Is it okay for me to please respectfully kind of share it with the rest of the world as a forever free print and play? And Jamie is a wonderful, wonderful person, and very supportive of hobbyists like myself. And he said, "Yeah, sure, absolutely." So it's there. It's posted. It's online. It's available for anyone to download and then make your own
Cool.
copy of what I call now Shelfy Showdown. But
Ah,
the short answer to your question is
hmm.
Shelfy Showdown is a complete retheme of the base game of Wingspan. So that's my
Right.
biggest retheme project and
Mhm.
also print and play construction project. Yeah.
Right. And so you kept all the card powers the same. You just kind of sort of changed the language to suit it to board games.
Yes. Well, yeah, I changed all of the themes. So, like, instead of laying eggs, you have meeples, which might be problematic now because since I did that, I guess some company has decided to copyright the term meeple. But
Yeah.
I'm not selling my
Yeah,
print
you're
and play
fine.
routine.
You're good. You're
So,
good.
But yeah, so I multicolored meeples rather than multicolored eggs. Um,
Right.
and instead of like, because like there's dice in the game with like different food that the birds eat, and I change those to like different board game components. So there's cards, there's dice, which is kind of it's super meta, right? It's like you're rolling dice, and one of the results is dice.
Right.
So it's like yeah. But
Uh,
I loved it. I loved working on that project. I loved making my copy. I loved playing it. So,
mhm.
win all around.
That's just so cool. Just making cool things just for the fun of it. I think that's just
Yeah.
so awesome. Um, okay, I'm gonna get back to my script here. I went off a little bit because there's just so many cool things that you're doing. But we touched on this a little bit, but can you let people know where they can find print and plays to download?
Yeah. This is actually a really relevant question because that's been a constant challenge, right? Folks who are new to print and play, folks who just enter our group, and one of the frequently asked questions is, wow, I just learned about this. I didn't even know that these things existed. Where can I find them? And in the past, you know, finding them has itself been kind of a fragmented experience. So when I joined up, there was kind of a PDF that was community built that was downloadable from another Facebook group that devoted to print and play that I was a part of at that time.
Mhm.
And it was just like kind of compiled by their community. And then like you could find out about it. It was a file in their Facebook group. You could download it, and then it had links to all these games.
Okay.
But it needed links would go stale, and it needed to be
Mhm.
updated, and
Right.
so those types of things. Along the way, I think it's sometime around the 2019, 2020 timeframe, a designer and someone in the board game group, board game scene called Jason Tagmeyer, of Button Shy Games. He
Right.
put up, he and his partners put up a website called pnparcade.com.
Mhm.
And that is a marketplace, a high quality marketplace where folks can discover and purchase or download for free print and play games.
Right.
And it's open to all print and play games, but they do impose some type of curation to make sure that the quality of the print and plays reaches a certain standard, right?
Right.
And of course, because they are also publishers, Button Shy Games, then this becomes also a way to sell and distribute Button Shy Games, and of course they specialize in kind of like 9 to 18 card micro games, right? That's their niche. And
Right.
so PNP Arcade is a great source, but it's not comprehensive. And
Mhm.
I don't think it means to be comprehensive. And then
Right.
Board Game Geek is another, place where you could actually do an advanced search. By the way, the number of people in the world who know how to do an advanced search on Board Game Geek is probably very small. But anyway, and of course, if there are any like hardcore Board Game Geek nerds watching this, they're like, "Hey, Martin, I know how to do that." But just to dramatize the idea that Board Game Geek is not the easiest website to navigate,
Yeah.
right? And um, but if you do an advanced search, you can one of the filters you can apply is print and play, and then you're supposed to get a filtered list of games that have been tagged with the tag print and play,
Right.
which is great. Except again, that is set by whoever adds that game to the database, and
Mhm.
then if it stops being a print and play, if they like had it as a promotion while the game was on crowdfunding or whatever, and then they pull the print and play version at some point, you're supposed to go in and remember to take off the tag, but many of them don't. So then
Right.
Board Game Geek's listing of print and play games is highly inaccurate and not,
Mhm.
you can't rely on it. So
Right.
anyway, again, long story short, last month I created on my own a website called pnpfinder.com.
Mhm.
And again, it's community run. It's a way for folks in the community to add their favorite print and play games, and then it's a database, so then you can just like do quickly a search, or there's curated lists. So like if you're like staff picks is one of my curations, or the print and play hideaways top 10 game print and play games for like as of June 2024, that's
Sure.
there. That's I have a bunch of different like curated lists, free print and play rethemes. So PnP Finder is kind of like my effort to address the current state of fragmentation and ambiguity about where do I find print and play games.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, there are about 300 entries in the database. Um, and again, the intention here is not to be comprehensive,
Mm-hmm.
um, but rather to just kind of answer the question, hey, where's a good one-stop website where I can find good, worthwhile print and play games? And I think and hope that PNP Finder, again, reminder, it just started last month, but it's out there, um, is a way to answer that question, to address that concern.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I will link to that as well below so people can access that. I think that's really nice to have one place that you can kind of go and get a good sense of everything that's out there.
Thank
Um,
you.
yeah, so yeah, thank you so much for your effort with the Facebook group, with the YouTube, and also with PNP Finder. I think that's fantastic. So I want to know, Martin, what is your favorite thing about print and play games?
Yeah. Uh, Thank you for that question. Right, like I always say, well, print and play is actually two hobbies in one. Right, it's the crafting side, and that, well, to whatever extent you're comfortable with, right? Like when I first started, there was a lot of crafting involved in general, and
Mm-hmm.
most of us were like equally crafters and game players. Arguably, a lot of people were more into the crafting side, and then the playing was kind of like a secondary thing, which,
Right.
you know, everybody in board gaming kind of has that challenge as well, right? But anyway, the
Right.
point being that you can get into print and play because you enjoy crafting. And then when you finish the crafting to whatever level you're comfortable with, then you have a playable game at the other end, which you can then play, you can enjoy with your friends and family, and etc. And it's a way. Other kind of sub elements of the hobby that I enjoy is the components, the raw materials that you use to craft your game are totally under your control, right? So, for
Mm,
example, if you're creating a player board and you want that player board to be thick and satisfying, um, you can spend money and you can get like really high quality 2 millimeter, 2.5 millimeter chipboard, and then put photo paper on it, and then just you can go all out, and
right.
then that one player board would be as expensive as just walking to a store and buying a game. But if you wanted to do that, you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I always get a kick about the other end of that spectrum, which is um, turning trash into treasure. You know what I mean? Like getting pretty much things that folks have discarded, like recycling, like cereal boxes. So, for
Right.
example, you can get cereal boxes, and then you can cut them to the right size. You can glue them until they're the thickness you want,
Sure.
and then just regular printer paper on top of it. And then can you make a board that once it's done, people look at it and they're like, "Wow, that's a really nice board." And I'm like, "Yeah." And you as the crafter, like, and I used discarded materials to be able to create that, right? So like that's another aspect of like how can I create really nice looking print and play versions of games, and then the raw materials are like you'd be surprised, like, what, you use
Mm-hmm.
that? Yeah.
Right.
And then it comes out and you're making something beautiful and high quality and deluxe out of very humble raw material. So that's another kind
Yeah.
of aspect of print and play that I love.
Yeah, that's really great. And especially for people who might be, budget conscious, like you mentioned earlier, getting into this hobby, but then all of a sudden they've bought a laminator and they've bought a 3D printer and they've bought, all these things to craft their own things. Because some people still, yeah, they still are mindful of wanting to not spend a ton of money. So if they can download a printable game for free or fairly cheap and then use recycled materials or things that they have around the house, they can get into gaming. Like it's so accessible to so many more people, just because, yeah, it's so easy to get into and you don't have to make it this beautiful thing. You can if you want to deluxify it yourself, like you mentioned, but there's so many different ways to get into it, which I really love about
Yeah.
that as well.
Yeah.
So just to shift into focusing on the like making print and play files and making games for other people to download. because I'm
Sure.
coming from the designer perspective here, and I know you've designed games as well. So, if a designer wanted to publish their own print and play game, which I am thinking about more and more, what tips or advice would you have for them starting out?
Yeah, another excellent question. So I just posted about this in the Print and Play Hideaway, in the kind of as reflecting on a project that I just did recently. So Malachi Rempin, I've worked with him before. He's a game designer, and he designed a game called Roll Camera, and a few years back, and he has a new one called Power Vacuum, a trick-taking game. And Mal's an artist and cartoonist, and he's incredible. So his games are wonderfully thematic, and they have great art. Um, and so I've worked with him before in making the print and play versions of his games. And so, we decided to collaborate again. The thing is, most of his components are not standard. And what I mean by that is his cards are not standard sizes, right? They're not poker size, they're not bridge size, they're not tarot size. They have a custom, length and width,
Right.
which, makes it a little bit more challenging for me as someone who's formatting the print and play, because if you make your cards a standard size, poker, bridge, tarot, mini euro, etc., there's a number of advantages there. Number one, for your users, for your print and players, it's easier for them to buy sleeves, card sleeves of
Yeah.
those sizes,
Right.
right? If they are a custom size, then it might be hard or even impossible for them to find sleeves. And sleeving print and play cards is one kind of base level way of just making print and play cards. Print it to plain paper, pair it with an old playing card or a magic card like a field,
Yeah.
slip it into a card, the right size card sleeve, and then you have a deck that you can play with.
Yeah.
They're non-standard, and from the standpoint of the person who's formatting your print and play version, like me, or you, if you want to get into it, when your cards are of a standard size, then there's a predictability there. There's
Mm.
experience there, right? Like I know exactly how many poker size cards are going to fit on a standard US letter or A4 size page.
Hmm.
But once you start getting into this card is non-standard, then a lot of other unknowns and variables come into play. So the first advice I would have for game designers who are considering making a print and play version is, unless you have a really great reason to have these non-standard sizes for your cards, try to stick to standard card sizes: poker, bridge, tarot, mini euro, etc.
Hmm.
Um, and that advice extends to tokens as well. The
Hmm.
most popular punches, circle and square punches,
Right.
are 3/4 inch, 1 inch, 1 1/4 inch, or 1.25 inch,
Right.
which is basically the size of a poker chip, right? So, so for example, if you have large tokens, it's great to make them the size of a poker chip, because then you can tell your print and player, you know what, buy some cheap poker chips, print this to a sticker, put it on your poker chip, and then you have a nice deluxe
Hmm.
token that you can play with.
Yeah.
Um, Another like really great way to get deluxe, excuse me, circle tokens is plastic coin capsules. So these are designed for coin collectors to be able to slip a coin into the capsule, and it's
Right.
clear, and then
Hmm.
you have, like you can show off your coin.
Yeah.
But if you have, and the most common size is 26 millimeters, which is 1 inch, right? So then you can buy hundreds of these for, pennies on the dollar from wherever, Amazon,
Hmm.
and then you create your 1 inch circle tokens, and your PM player has a inexpensive 1 inch puncher from Michaels or Hobby Lobby or wherever, and then
Hmm.
so they can punch out their circles, put them in the plastic coin capsule, and then it's like a deluxe token.
Hmm.
It's like the feel and the clackiness and the table feel,
Yeah.
is very nice. Um, Again, I don't want to like rag on Mel, but he's got these tokens of different sizes, shapes, and they're beautiful. but they
Right.
were a challenge for me to figure out like how do I lay these out on the page?
Yeah.
And I had to ask Mal's help. I'm like, Mal, can you give me some, I've been bashing my head against this kind of formatting challenge for like some time now. Can you help me? And Mal eventually like laid them out on the page to the right relative sizes, and then I'm like, okay, I didn't have to worry about it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
just in general, I have other examples too, but like the point is try to stick to standard sizes and shapes of cards and components unless you have. I'm not trying to like tamp down on creativity, but I'm saying that if you intend to have a print and play version, it
Hmm.
really helps. It really helps the person
Yep.
formatting your print and play file, and it also helps the people who are going to be printing and crafting your print and play file if you're
Yes.
sticking to those kind of standard things.
Yeah, 100%. So, I prototype a lot of my games for playtesting, and I had a game where I had a bunch of tokens, circular tokens, and I was cutting them out with scissors, every single one, and it was the worst. Then I would put them on sticker paper, then I'd peel off each individual one, put them on some sort of token that they didn't fully match up with. It was the worst. So then when
Yeah,
I ordered the circular hole punches, I was like, my world has changed. Like
yeah,
it was so easy. It looked so much better. So yeah, now I always lay out my tokens to be the size of my circular hole punch, and it makes things so much cleaner and so much easier.
yeah.
Um,
So that's great, and I'm happy that you've experienced that. The other tip I'll share about laying out circle tokens on a page is another kind of something that some designers do is, well, I'll just lay them out side by side. The edges are touching each other, right? Well, if you're using a circle punch, if you're punching out one, you might start to eat
mhm.
into
Yeah.
the edges of the ones. So you have to have a little bit of, I put like half an inch of space between each token on
Yes.
the page. So you have room to maneuver your punch. And that's the kind of thing where designers who are making a print and play version, they're formatting it for the first time, but they've never tried to build a print and play game or craft one
Right.
on their own,
Hmm.
that's stuff that doesn't occur to them, right? So that's a really great point to kind of call out. And in general, it's a best practice of to any game designer if you're wanting to format your own print and play version, build a few print and play games first
Yes.
to kind of get how it feels, and then that informs how you format your game on the page. Anyway, just a little
Definitely.
thing I wanted to add that.
Yeah, no, that is very, very helpful. So we touched a little bit on this about where people can download print and play games to make and play, but where are all the different places that designers can post their games for other people to download or buy from them?
For sure, yeah. So, if it's a free print and play, Board Game Geek is, I always say, the best, right? Like
Hmm.
the file section. So, let's say you have a physical version of your game. So you'd have a Board Game Geek entry. Every Board Game Geek entry of a game will have a file section. And, uploading your digital files of the file section for your print and play version is one great way to share that for a free version of your print and play game. If you have a paid version of your print and play game, PNP Arcade that I mentioned earlier is a great place for that. And you can reach out to them. I think they have a Discord channel, and that's the main way to kind of communicate with Jason Tagmeyer and his team. They're great. And like I say, they'll work with you to make sure that your PNP file adheres to certain standards. itch.io is a website that is gaining more popularity for both free and paid versions of print and play games. So there are a number of indie game designers and some publishers that offer their print and play version through itch.io. Wargamevault.com. This is an older website, um, primarily, targeted toward wargamers, but there are also other genres of games, science fiction, 4X, etc., that aren't, like hardcore war games. And again, it supports free as well as paid versions of your print and play games. Those would be the main ones. Let's see, did I cover everything? Yeah, the one thing is like sometimes folks come to our Facebook group, the Hideaway, Print and Play Hideaway, and they just like upload directly to our file section, or they post a Google Drive link And we actually have a group rule that says, please don't post direct links to our Facebook group, because we don't want to be a file repository. That's not our role. We want
Mm-hmm.
to be able to point people to where these things are actually hosted.
Right.
The final place where you could consider hosting is your own designer or publisher website.
Right.
You know, so but yeah,
Yes.
those are kind of like the main ones.
No, that's fantastic. So I'll be sure to include links to those as well. So one other question I had for you was, from the designer perspective, would you recommend or would you advise that a designer run a Kickstarter or some other crowdfunding campaign for their print and play project?
Many do, and the ones that are generally like more popular nowadays are, kind of like roll and write games, the lighter ones. And so they'll set a low target funding goal, and then when it's met, then anything above that is great for them. And then when it fulfills, then they just kind of share the digital files with people who have backed.
Right.
There are a number of folks who are kind of like in that space, and they're, I mean, they keep doing it. So I have to assume, I'm not personally in that space, but I have to assume that it's working for them.
Right.
Um, then there are folks who provide print and play versions of their physical games that they put on crowdfunding. So a fairly recent example that I can think of is a game called, oh no, I want to say it's Star Trader. Um, uh, uh, um, this went on like last year, and they're based the creator is based out of Australia. I want to say Peter. Peter is his name. Oh, my brain is not so good. But anyway, um, he went to crowdfunding with a physical version of his game, but he offered a print and play pledge tier,
Mm.
and I think it was just $1. Like you could for $1 US, you could get the print and play version of this. And it's a pretty good game. And so I'm like, that sounds like a great deal. So I got into it, and I, crafted my copy. I made a video about it, a playthrough, et cetera, et cetera. And I really had a lot of fun with it.
Mm.
So that's another kind of route where you can use your print and play as an adjunct to your physical game crowdfunding project.
Right.
So there's a whole bunch of different ways to do it, and the print and play, in my estimation, like the print and play audience is growing.
Hmm.
Obviously, like as you mentioned, my group is already at like kind of 13,000 people. But I don't know that because it's still at the end of the day a niche within a niche, right? So like, um, I don't think that like companies and designers um, can get what's the right word I'm saying, can reliably count on like a good profit margin when you're doing this stuff. Although on the plus side, if you're doing a Kickstarter for a print and play, then you don't have to worry about like manufacturer overseas, shipping, and all that, like things which when I think about those things, I'm just like deer in headlights. I'm like, I don't even want to, no, no, I,
Yeah.
I don't want to touch any of that with a 10-foot pole, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and yeah, but anyway, yes, the short answer is yes, you can run some good crowdfundings for a pure print and play pledge project, or a physical with a print and play component, for a roll and write, and those types of things. I mean, and the keys are whatever works for creating a successful like physical game crowdfund are the same types of things for a print and play successful print and play crowdfund. Build
Right.
your community beforehand, you know um, kind of promotional efforts that make sense and are not spam,
Hmm.
and those types of things, right? Like, um, as an admin of a board game group, I do have folks come in, and it's like they create the account is brand new, they haven't even tried to interact with anybody in the community, and then their first post is, hey, it's a kind of like a low effort, um, I have these two versions of a very similar graphic. which one do you prefer, A or B? By the
Uh,
way, here's the link to my Kickstarter if you want to
right.
follow. It's like the point of this is not, they're not really interested in that. They're interested in that Kickstarter link, right?
Yeah.
We see this types of things so many times. And yeah, it's, like there's no substitute for actually trying to engage and learn
Yes.
and be a part of the community that
Yeah.
hopefully is the audience that you want to back your game down the road.
100%. Yeah. And being open to feedback, especially from people who have done it before and hearing about what's worked for them, what hasn't, rather than just jumping in thinking that you know how
Yeah.
to do everything.
Are you
Um,
a member of the Board Game Design Lab community?
yes, definitely. That is a
It's one of
fantastic
the
group.
best. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So, so, so helpful. Yeah. I saw someone post in there the other day saying, check out this amazing game that I made. It's never been done before. It's the best party game ever made. Something like that.
Mm,
And all the comments were, yeah, it was a brand new person. They had never posted anything before. It wasn't even asking for feedback. It was just
yeah.
look at this amazing thing that I've done. It's the best game ever made. And yeah, a lot of people were just like,
Sadly, if I had $5 for every time I've seen somebody say, their first post is like, I have the greatest game idea. And by the way, how do I patent it so that nobody steals it? And I'm just like,
exactly.
cool.
Oh my goodness. Just so many. If people just took a bit of time to scroll through and just, soak everything in and learn rather than just
Yeah,
being like, look at this thing that I've done and it's perfect and amazing and tell me how great it is.
right.
No, I think your group is such a fantastic resource, BGDL as well. Just those are like the two that I always tell people about to
Thank
join,
you.
especially new designers. Yeah, no, I think it's really great.
Yeah, and
Um,
we've always tried to be welcoming, right? Like that's the key because uh, I mentioned earlier, I used to be part of a larger kind of print and play group at the time, and then I didn't have a great experience. And then in my conceit at the time, I'm like, what if I start my own? And what if I'm the admin? And what if I, admin it the way that, in a kinder, gentler, more welcoming, more arms open kind of way. And that's been the vision since I started Print and Play Hideaway in like early 2018 with like 10 people. And
mhm.
now I'm going to brag a little bit. Now we have more members than that other group that I left. So
Yeah.
maybe we're doing something right. I don't know.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's a real testament to you can feel how supportive your community is and everyone's cheering each other on. And yeah, you might get posts like that, but majority of the comments are saying, hey, like, you might want to learn about these things first before jumping into that and whatever. No, I think
Yeah.
having a supportive group like that, that's why I started my group Board Game Besties for women who design games, like just having that forum
Yeah, that's
and that
awesome.
support and encouragement to each other in sort of a niche I think is really, really important. And I'm so glad that I found this group. I only learned about it recently, and I'm just like, this is amazing. This whole new world of print and plays have opened up for me. So I'm very excited about. I've already had so many ideas of what I could do. And I think it's just, for me, what I really like is how accessible it is for gamers to get into gaming very affordably, but also for
Yeah.
designers to get their games out into the world. Like we have so many roadblocks in front of us. We have to pitch to publishers or we have to start our own publishing company. Both of those two things are incredibly difficult and time consuming. And just
Hmm.
having the option of just getting your game, you can just post it up today. You can put it up online, people can play it today. And I just think
You
that's
could.
so fantastic. Yeah.
And I totally 100% agree with everything that you just shared. And I will put one more, kind of element in there. If you're a new designer and you want the feedback from other fellow designers, try to consider joining a print and play design contest on Board Game Geek, as I mentioned earlier, because that was my entry point in 2018. I didn't know. I didn't consider myself a game designer. I'm just a player. What do I know? But
Mm-hmm.
then I joined this contest. There were like 50 other budding designers of varying levels of experience. You had folks who this is their first time, the folks who are like they've been doing this year after year. But everybody was super welcoming and supportive. Folks actually were interested in providing feedback to my rule book, to my
Yes.
very poor art, to all this stuff. In fact, because the art that I was putting on there was like super, super prototype, just like stick figure, whatever.
Right.
And then an actual graphic designer just posted like, and if I were making a tile of your game, Martin, this is what it would look like. And it was incredible.
Oh,
And I'm
cool.
just like, wow. And I didn't know what to do with that. What I didn't
Hmm.
realize was that that was their way of telling me, I'd like to sign on board with you and be your graphic designer if you'll have me. I I,
Mm.
I was so green that I didn't even get what that meant.
Wow.
And so then Janine Viglietti, an incredible graphic designer, became my co-designer on the cleaner. And then that's why the game looks as incredible as it does. And Janine was willing to do it, just sweat equity and no, compensation, just like I was doing it. And so
Right.
um, just another like, promotion for there are game design contests running on Board Game Geek all year long. Solo game design contest, 54 card, 9 card, roll and write
Yeah.
contest, all manner, and they're all super supportive and wonderful communities of fellow designers. So anyway,
Yes.
that's another thing I'll put in there.
No, I absolutely agree. And that is something I want to underscore that print and play games should still be held to the same standard as all of our other games that we pitch to publishers. We shouldn't just be throwing our games up online because they've been rejected by every single publisher that we've presented them to. That's probably telling us something, right? We want to
Yeah.
put out good quality games up online for people to download. So they need to be play tested just as vigorously and thoroughly as we would if we were planning on pitching this game to publishers. And personally, I would still pitch the game to publishers. And if you're getting interest, that's telling you that you're on the right track. And then I would, still publish it on my own. But now you have that feedback, you have that confirmation that you do have a good quality product that you're putting out there and not just throw anything. I mean, you still can for you can do whatever you
Mm-hmm.
want, but like for me, I would definitely encourage designers to still get if you're getting that positive feedback from either publishers you're pitching it to or play testers, you need to still have play testers say, I love this game. Where can I buy it?
Mm-hmm.
I want to play this again. Only, I would strongly say, only self publish games that are getting that feedback as print and
Yeah,
play games. You still
for
want to make
sure.
sure you hold them up to that same standard.
But yeah, absolutely. And then on the flip side of that, the stakes are kind of lower. If your target is I'm designing something for a contest, I'm not explicitly thinking about like pitching to publish it to publisher or going to crowdfunding. Um, that frees you up to just have wackier ideas and
Yeah,
crazier creativity and
right.
just try stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you're still going to put it out there and you're still going to get feedback on it, but because the stakes are a little bit lower, not a lot, not so much as kind of riding on the success. This has to succeed. Then
Right.
it is an avenue for creativity. I have found.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that's another kind of element of like joining these design contests.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I haven't ever done one of the BGG design contests, but I think because yeah, one, like you mentioned, the BGG website is not intuitive to
Mhm.
use. I find it very difficult to understand. I don't understand how the contests really work,
Yeah.
but I think it's something that I should spend the time to learn to figure out because I do think it's a way to work out your creative muscles, connect with other designers, especially, yeah, if you want to get into the print and play space
Yeah.
specifically. Well, thank you so much, Martin. I really appreciate your time today. Do you have any last thoughts or advice for anyone wanting to get more into print and play games?
Yeah, and the best advice I have for you is come join us in the Print and Play Hideaway. It's free. We don't run ads. We are not interested in monetizing. It's purely a community of people who are interested in the hobby and are really happy to answer questions of, for folks who are new to the hobby and to help folks have as positive and as good and as an enriching an experience as we have all had in the print and play hobby. Obviously, we think it's a great hobby, and we want to share that with as many other people as possible. So yeah, that's my best advice: is come join us in the print and play hideaway, and get a pair of scissors, print out some paper, and just do it, get started, learn, and that's about it.
I love that. That's fantastic. Well, thank you again, Martin, so much. I appreciate having you here today. It's been a really
Thank
great
you.
conversation. All
Yeah,
right,
I
take care.
appreciate it too. Thanks so much. Have a good one.